Таны төлөө эх орн чинь юу хийж чадах вэ гэж асуухаас өмнө та өөрөө эх орныхон төлөө юу хийж чадах вэ гэж асуу. Ян Фэжерал.
Сайн байцгаана уу хүнд үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай дефактоны түргийн зочноор та бидний сайн мэдих Монголын хамгийн том банк, гүйцэтгэх банкны шинэ гүйцэтгэх захирал Саймон Моррис оролцож байна. Good evening.
Good evening, Jago. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming for this our interview talk show, and we are very delighted to see new CEO of Haan Bank. Yeah. And according to our program, I would like to ask you about which country are you from, town, your parents, schools, and how come you banker?
Well, I by nationality, I'm British.
Саймон Моррис 2010 оны 8 дугаар сараас Хаан Банкны гүйцэтгэх захирлын албан тушаалыг хашиж байна. Ноён Моррис Их Британий Стандарт Чартерд банкны Аз, Европ, Африкийн улс орнууд дахь салбарт 25 жил ажилласан туршлагатай. 2010-аас 2010-нд Бруней, Филиппин, Индонез, Шри Ланка дахь тус банкны салбарын захирлаар ажиллаж байсан. Олон улсын банкны менежмент, санхүү, арилжааны банкны чиглэлээр зөвлөгөө өгч байсан туршлагатай. Индонезийн гадаадын банкнуудын холбооны удирдах зөвлөлийн дарга, Индонез, Бруней дэх Их Британий худалдааны танхимын дарга, Шри Ланкийн банкнуудын холбооны тэргүүнээр ажиллаж байсан. Их Британий Хенли бизнесийн сургуулийг бизнесийн удирдлагын магистр зэрэгтэй төгссөн.
There's a part of the UK called Wales, which is in the western part, which is where I come from, and that's where I grew up. So I think it was fairly traditional upbringing there. I was an only was an only child, and I am an only child. So I'm not going to have any brothers or sisters now, that's for sure. But so that was traditional upbringing in Wales, in the western part of the UK. And I started off banking in banking after I was in college, and I'm ashamed to say I think it was something I sort of drifted into rather than took a conscious decision to do, because I'm not sure that when you're a youngster that you actually you say, wow, I'd really like to get into banking. Well, I didn't in those days anyway.
You were in national service.
Yeah, I did a national service in the on a volunteer basis in the police, in the British police. So that was quite interesting, because I suppose I came from what the British would call a sort of a middle class background. So we were quite comfortably off, and you behaved in a certain respectful way. You followed the law, and you kind of assumed that other people did that. But yet, when you were in the police and you had the uniform on, it was.
How was it look?
It was kind of surprising how some people, it was a bit of a shock, really.
How long have you been serving there?
I did 3 years in total, and then it was, I think in any country, in any element of society, you get some people who don't respect the police. Now, in the British context, the police are quite well respected. Corruption is practically zero.
Constable.
Yeah, and I had the big helmet as well. I had a police constable, and I had the big police helmet to go with it. But it was a bit of a shock to me initially when people were rude to you, or they swore at you, or they tried to hit you. But eventually you get used to it, and you just live with it.
You have been serving Royal Marines.
Yeah, I was in the Royal Marine Commando Reserve, but I mean that was again something interesting, something different. I mean, I think when you're younger and you're in your teens and in your 20s, you don't really think about these things, and it's physically demanding, and you sort of shrug it off. And then I think as you get a little bit older, you think, well, actually some of these things were, perhaps I wouldn't do it again.
You were on the ship?
No, because I was the Marines are ship based, but because I did it on a sort of part-time voluntary basis, I was based on land, and then we used to be called up for training for time to time. But it's it was a very interesting experience, and I quite liked it, really.
You look very fit. You were a karate man.
Yeah, but
How come?
again, I mean, it all sounds a bit too macho, really. I mean, I think that there's a bit more of a humbling start to the karate, which was that when I was a kid, when I was about 8 or 9. Again, I mentioned I was the only child. My father thought I was not tough enough.
Okay.
And he felt that I needed to be toughened up a little bit, so he made me go to judo.
And into
so
military.
He literally had to physically take me every week and make me go to judo. So I did judo for a number of years and got to a proficient level with that. But then then in the sort of the mid-80s, you had this whole Bruce Lee kung fu type scenario. I possibly don't remember, but everyone wanted. So I started learning karate, and I was just average at it. But I mean, I kept going, and I trained for many years, and ended up sort of teaching kids and teaching a little bit of self-defense and things like that.
But now you're still doing your motorbike and hiking. How do you do that in Mongolia?
Well, the motorbiking is something I've always done. I mean, since I was sort of 17 or 18, but in a practical way, because it's nice as a hobby. It's kind of difficult sometimes if it's your main form of transport because of snow, ice, or rain, or whatever.
In particular here, I
well,
believe.
I mean, people. I've got quite a big off-road motorcycle here, which is made by KTM, the Austrian company. But it's
wow.
But I went out on it just at the beginning of December, and I had lots of clothing on, and I thought I'll be fine.
And
But what I'd overlooked was that the visor, the shield on the bike, it was icing up from the inside.
Yes.
So I was on the motorbike for about 20 minutes, and I just got to the outskirts of UB, and I couldn't see anymore because it was just completely iced up.
You cannot go without visor.
No, I couldn't see. So I had to flip the visor up. Then the wind was going straight into my eyes.
You came back.
It was a disaster.
Oh, okay.
So I came back. But to go to your last point, I mean, I think one of the beauties and the benefits of Mongolia is sort of the natural beauty, and anywhere you look around UB, you can see the mountains, and I think it's a great opportunity on the weekend.
You will enjoy the weather
Absolutely.
in Mongolia soon.
It's you just put a few extra layers on. I think it was minus 22, minus 24 today. So, but it's put on a thicker coat, but it's fabulous countryside to go hiking in.
You have been working for Standard Chartered Bank almost 25 years in different countries, Brunei, Indonesia, right?
Yeah, it was a great privilege. I mean, I think that.
Tell us about this chartered bank, please.
Well, Standard Chartered Bank is a British bank. It's an international bank, and I think
it's not South African.
It's a very good question you asked. That is that there's often confusion between Standard Bank and Standard Chartered Bank. Standard Bank is the South African bank, and Standard Chartered is the British bank. And they were the same bank until the 1980s, in the apartheid years, when Standard Chartered actually sold Standard Bank. So they're not related anymore. But I mean, I think that it was a great privilege to work for Standard Chartered Group for nearly 25 years. I mean, I think that it's evolved into, excuse me, one of, in my opinion, and I'm not employed there anymore, so I think I can be objective. One of the best run banks in the world. And even if you look back at over the economic crisis, this is a bank which has posted record results.
Even with the last one?
For the last 8 years. For the last 8 years.
Record growth.
Record results, record growth. Wow. I think it's been a fabulous...
How come? Why is that?
I think...
when everybody falls down?
I think that there is good leadership in the bank. I think there was a clear strategy. I think the bank established very early on what it wanted to do and what it didn't want to do, and it stuck very closely to that strategy. And I think it was disciplined in its execution. So there's a lesson, I think, here for us as I move on to a new stage about what was good in Standard Chartered that we can look and replicate where appropriate here. So I think that. Also, one had the opportunity to work in different markets. I was the CEO in, as you say, in like a very small country, physically and population-wise, like Brunei, to to a country like Indonesia, which has got
one of the largest in the
in the
world.
world, and 240 million people, and very big business for Standard Chartered. But I think it gave one the opportunity to work with people in different cultures, in different environments, and it was something I think I'm blessed to have had the opportunity to do.
How did you ended up with Mongolia? How come that you are here now?
Well, there's that's a very interesting question. I mean, I was CEO in Standard Chartered in Indonesia, and I got a phone call from a headhunter, and I think one used to get phone calls from headhunters from time to time, and frankly, most of the opportunities seem to be in the Middle East. But I was very happy with Standard Chartered. They were an excellent bank to work for, and this was very, very unusual. I mean, the guy said to me, well, we'd like to talk to you about an opportunity. So I was sort of like half listening, and I said, oh, yeah, but where? Yeah, he said, Mongolia, and I said, what, really, Mongolia? And he said, yeah, okay, well, so just mentally thinking Mongolia. Okay, I know where Mongolia is, and then had a number of discussions and chats with the guy over a number of months, and it got to the stage then where I think I spoke to the shareholders of the bank, and we felt that we had something to discuss a little bit further. So they invited me to come here and have a discussion with them in Mongolia, and which was almost a year ago, and I came here and I left the tropical climate in plus 32 degrees in summer weight clothes, and landed at the Genghis Khan airport, and it was sort of minus 20, and it was snowing, and spoke to the guys here, and the rest is history, really.
So you are from one mineral dependent country, you came to another completely mineral dependent country.
There's a theme here, isn't there? There's a sort of commodity theme here, but I think that my view on I suppose there were a number of reasons why I was happy and frankly keen to come to Mongolia. Was one, I think, was that I completed 25 years with Standard Chartered and thoroughly enjoyed it. But if I didn't make a change now, then I think that perhaps I would have just stayed with them with another 5 or 10 years, and that would have probably been okay. But I thought there was an opportunity to make a different sort of career in a different environment.
This will be a difference for this country, because you are in charge of the largest bank, which has branches in all administrative units of this country. And which is growing very dynamically, and it has a lot to do with all sectors of the economy. So that's why I want to talk about the Mongolia now, economy. And let me start from a question on, you had a substantial loans to herders all around the country. What happened with those, in particular during the crisis time?
I think that it's a question I'm often asked, and I think that we're now in the early stages of 2011. I think a year ago, when the country was suffering from the Zud, and we were just coming out of 2009 with a very, very challenging economic environment, I think that the outlook was quite pessimistic. Looking back now on 2010, the performance of our herder portfolio has been very good indeed, and I think that fortunately we have, where we've been able to, we've worked with clients to help them to get to a better place, and I think our customers have responded magnificently. I think we've only had a relatively small number of challenges, and I think that that particular portfolio I would say is in much better shape than we expected. But I also think it's a reflection on the honesty and integrity of our customers.
Yes, and plus because this business risk, does not, I mean, this risk, a lot of natural risk is there involved, and not necessarily depends on the quality of herdsmen. It hits very badly sometimes.
Absolutely.
How do you see the exit solution for this issue? There's an insurance, as maybe you have heard about that, and if there is any other way to solve and to be a little bit better manage the risk?
I think that I think if there was a development of some form of appropriate type of insurance that would cover these sort of risks, I think that that would be extremely helpful, because I think you're absolutely correct in what you say, in as much that these were very largely circumstances beyond people's control. You've just got very hard-working people who put absolutely, they put their heart and soul into their business, and through no fault of their own.
And yet they have lost everything what they
absolutely.
had.
And you know, you can't but feel sympathy.
Have you written off loans?
We have written off some loans where we feel that the chances of payment are zero. But again, very small amounts in relation to the portfolio.
What's the total portfolio now and asset?
I haven't got the exact number to hand, but I mean, I think if you look at it year on year, if we say, you know, how did 2010 compare to 2009? I mean, in terms of our deposit growth would be in excess of 50%, and our asset growth would be, you know, in the mid 30s. So I think that
it's a very substantial growth.
Yeah, I think that we've been pleased with that. I mean, I think that, as you know, Jagal, from your background, I mean, I think we have to discount that a little bit by inflation, because you know that would obviously sort of boost the gross numbers. So there's perhaps if we net that off, it comes down to smaller numbers. But I think on the deposit side, I mean, I think that what that indicates to us, and it's what our customers tell us, is that there are two very common reasons why our customers tell me they choose Haan Bank. The first one is trust, and the second one is convenience. And the trust one is very important to us, because, you know, I think most people are aware that we're a very transparent bank. We strive to have, you know, high standards of governance, and our customers work very hard for their money, and I think, you know, we are morally and professionally obliged to protect it as much as we can. So I think that I think has come through in times of turbulence. People want to know that their money's safe. So I think that's kind of reflected in the deposit growth.
How many branches altogether in the country?
It's 500 now.
500.
So,
speaking about banking sector again, still Mongolia banking sectors keep growing, and I think now it is overgrowing the total GDP, or about, which means equal. Then still we have a problem with not decreasing of deposit rate, and we keep increasing the loan interest rate. And now this margin spread has become very small. What do you think about it, and why is it so?
Well, I think there are a number of issues in that question which are quite important. Is that if customers are pushing for, you know, high deposit rates, then to a certain extent that fuels higher interest rates.
Which is the case.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what we've seen in the last, I would say what I think I've seen in the last 1 or 2 months is we've seen deposit rates starting to come down, and we have been able to pass some of that savings on in lower interest rates in certain sectors as well. So I think systemically I'm encouraged by that. If the rates can move down in parallel, that would be good.
We are in a very strange situation in Mongolia, where our business, a majority of Mongolian businesses are small, medium enterprises. maybe 80% of all total companies' amounts, then they have to run business with at least 24% for bank cost, and then to have to make certain profit, which is by all sides, in any country, a very hard task.
Yeah, I think that, I think you look at the various sectors of business, and I think that, that number of 24% would not be applicable to all sectors. But I in the context of if there are certain sectors where there is that interest rate payable, then obviously it's that it is a bit of a higher hurdle to overcome. Yes.
So those companies, large good customers, go themselves and take money from abroad.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with this money flow, and still inside what we are working all together in banking sector, how do you compare them? Which will be prevailing, or which is prevailing now?
The topic that we perhaps don't like to talk about is if you look at the economic opportunities for the country, you look at the nature of the investment needed to actually maximize those opportunities for the long-term benefit of the country, that will only come through and with partnership with foreign banks, in my opinion. Now,
exactly.
Perhaps
Speaking
I could be
about
wrong.
Foreign banks, why foreign banks, big names themselves, are not coming to Mongolia to operate up until now?
Well, I think that the issue there, in my opinion, is that they can probably do the type of business they want to do by not having a physical presence in Mongolia. So
through commercial banks.
Yes, if you look at it, if you are a big mining investor, an international company in Mongolia, you will have relationships with the Standard Chartered, the HSBCs, the Citibanks, etc. So they will, one assumes, provide facilities for those operations. So the funding is being done, but it's being done offshore rather than onshore. Now, I think that...
How long will go? Why is that?
Well, I think it depends on the individual strategies of
HSBC.
Yeah.
It's a world local bank.
Yeah.
It has in every smallest town in Mexico they have a branch.
Yeah.
And they don't have here.
I think, and I mean, I have looked at this from an international bank perspective. So if I put my old hat on, I could say, what they might say, Jargal, is to actually say, well, Mongolia, it's a physically very big country, but really it's quite a small country because it's only got a population of consumption, etc. So again, they're sort of saying, well, where are the quick wins? Where can I actually make a difference, but do it sort of cost effectively? And it's on the corporate banking side, and it's probably doing offshore banking.
Mostly with mining huge companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
so the mining industry itself has such specifics you have just now described.
Yeah.
And those big companies are better off having their services from abroad rather than.
Well, I think when we look in the mirror, we see what we see. Reality is reality. Now, what I mean by that, Jargal, is that firstly, you are talking about significant types of banking facilities which local banks may not have the financial capacity to deliver, which is point one. Secondly, point two is that it might need a level of technical expertise in very specialist areas that does not currently exist in local banks. So I think that I don't think we should be ashamed about that. I don't think we should be necessarily.
On the other possibility is there's a merger and acquisition. Could be among the banks if all are transparent and readable, all financials by.
Well, that's a big if, of course, isn't it? I mean, I think that if all banks were transparent, I think that to attract. I mean, what I'm thinking about, and the reason I'm hesitating here, is to say that clearly one strategic possibility is that you could get some foreign banks would look at banks in Mongolia and perhaps say, well, I'm actually interested in developing a retail business, an SME, a local commercial business there. Do I do that organically, which tends to take quite a time, or would I look at perhaps buying a share in a local bank, or in fact even buying a local bank? So I think that clearly that is a strategic option, but it comes back then to the question that you've raised, which is really then, you've got to have high standards of governance, you've got a high standard of transparency, because
in order to be
that's the basic entry level.
Yes.
If these people turn up at a bank and they feel that
sure
it's not
and
transparent in nature.
Three banks, largest three together, is 60-70% of top.
It depends on the product sector, but it can be 70% plus, and I mean that's just the nature of the environment today.
Then can we look at the issue of higher deposit rate also because Mongolian Mongolian supply unit, or those who has a supply fund, cannot invest otherwise with higher return on capital market? Would it be one of the reasons?
I think it possibly could be for the more sophisticated investor, but I think if we cast our mind back a few weeks ago to 2010, we've had what you might call sort of private bank clients of foreign banks interested in investing in Mongolia for two reasons. One is they can see that the interest rates are quite attractive, and secondly, we had significant appreciation of the tugrik, so they were getting a double benefit there. But coming back to the question about mergers and acquisitions, I would say that my personal view is I think mergers would be kind of unlikely, and then acquisitions, you have two scenarios. You have acquisition by I suppose foreigners or foreign banks, and the other issue then tends to be that banks get acquired when they get into trouble. But I think again that's very distracting from management time. You spend a lot of time trying to fix the broken bank,
time, energy, and then
from
the end you don't go much.
Different banks, different ways. I would say that I think that I think that would be a challenge. Fixing broken banks takes time.
Simon, how do you find Mongolian banking environment in comparison with those countries you were working, and what we can improve here?
I think that the banking environment in Mongolia is going through change. It's going through a transition. I can see that, to their credit, I think many, but frankly not all banks, are trying to improve their standards. And I think that competition, I would suggest increasing, which I think is good. It's good for the clients. I think it's good for us. So it stops complacency. I think that Bank of Mongolia are, to their credit, I think trying to implement international standards. And I think that in my modest experience with them, they appear to be the type of central bank that is, open to dialogue. They're not so arrogant in that respect. So, but I think there's a long way to go. I think there is a long way to go. But what I'm encouraged about is the fact that, in terms of catch up and taking ourselves to a higher standard, is that we don't have to follow all the steps that perhaps countries in more developed markets did over 20. Absolutely. So I think we can leapfrog and get to a better place faster than many other countries. And I think when you look at the huge number of opportunities that Mongolia has, then I think there are. It must be a fabulous time to be a young Mongolian. I mean, if you know,
particularly when our national currency is appreciating so well.
Well, yes, until it's.
What do you think about this appreciation? Does it? It's too sudden, no?
Well, I think that I think that until about the middle of December, it was actually appreciating very nicely. But I think what we've seen in the last few weeks is we've seen a modest depreciation of the tugrik against the dollar, which we would expect to continue up until really the sort of just post-Sagansar period. But then
isn't it because Mongol Bank was intervening?
Well, I think there are a number of factors, and but I think the reality is it had a very good year last year. I think it was one of the top performing currencies in the world. But looking back on the last few weeks, which admittedly have been a bit quiet because of the festive season, it has
Tugrik, Australian dollar, and yen was the number 3.
Yeah, there was a South American currency, and I can't
one
remember
of the countries,
but,
yes,
as well. So I think we were up there in the medal position. That's for sure.
Do you think it will be appreciated further, and how much it will be appreciated further?
I think that's a question we spend a lot of time thinking about. Do we think it'll appreciate during the course of the year? Yes, we do. So we're positive on the outlook for the tugrik, but we have, even in-house, we have different views on where it might end.
Do you see the relations of Mongolian tugrik's appreciation with appreciation of Chinese RMB or yuan?
I personally don't. I think that I think that the different economies, different factors in play here. But to come back to your question, I think we're positive about the outlook, and we see further appreciation in the year.
You run a RMB account for your customers.
Yes.
No? So Mongolia is one of only, I was told, only 2 countries where RMB is allowed to work like this.
Yeah, it's quite a restricted currency globally.
And yet it's playing so much important role in Mongolia, and people buy dollar to buy RMB there, as you know.
But I think that we shouldn't be surprised that there's an appetite for RMB here when we are, I would think, an important trading partner for China, and
almost exclusive for us.
Well, look,
in terms of food, everything would depend on that.
Yeah, but I'm cynical enough to sort of also look at these situations and say that people make these provisions and they make these allowances because it suits them from a commercial perspective to do so. It's these issues are not always done on a what one might call a charitable basis. So I think that you can look behind the decisions and say, well, it probably suits both parties because it is an important trading relationship.
Okay, Simon, our time comes to the end. My last question is, how do you see this year, 2011, for banking sectors vis-a-vis mining growth?
I think it'll be an exciting year for mining growth. I think that we are looking, as well as the very well-known names and the big investors, I think I'm quite excited about the supply chain and the small and medium-sized enterprises who'll be supplying the food, the gasoline, the transportation. So I think that we're very positive about it. We're planning very much to support that in every way that we can. We're sort of we're looking at also increasing the level of expertise in our bank by hiring a few extra people, particularly on the risk side, so we can actually make sure that we play our part in that aspect of national development.
Okay, my very last question.
Yeah.
What is the most important quality of leadership, in your personal opinion?
Integrity.
Where what you say matches what you are doing, right?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Simon, for coming for
My
our
pleasure.
interview.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you very much.